Your company probably runs dozens of automated workflows right now, quietly in the background, and most days you never even think about them at all. A lead comes in and gets assigned to the right rep. An invoice arrives and gets matched to a purchase order. A customer sends a request and it gets routed and handled, all without a single person touching it. Until something happens that nobody programmed for, the one case the rules never actually planned for, and the whole thing grinds to a halt waiting on a person. The invoice doesn't match the purchase order. A required document is missing from the file. The customer asks a question the script was never built to answer at all. And suddenly, your beautiful AI automation does the exact same thing every automation before it has always done the moment it runs into something it can't handle on its own. It gives the problem to a human. And that right there is the gap I think the next generation of AI agents is actually going to go after hard. Chapter 1, the agent explosion, and it's moving a lot faster than most teams have noticed, even the ones paying attention. This isn't some future trend you can put off thinking about for a year. Businesses are already moving on it right now, this year, with real budget behind it. Microsoft found that 81% of business leaders expect agents to be part of their AI strategy within the next 12 to 18 months, not someday, soon. Google describes this shift as moving away from single prompts and toward entire digital assembly lines, whole systems doing work end to end without a person sitting in the loop watching every step. So, the real race here isn't about building another chatbot for people to type questions into and wait around for an answer. It's about giving AI the permission to actually go do the work itself, not just talk about doing it and hand the task straight back to you. But there's a problem here, and honestly, it's a fairly big one worth slowing down for. Gartner predicts that more than 40% of agentic AI projects will be cancelled before the end of 2027 after real money has already gone into them. And it's not because the agents themselves are useless or the underlying technology doesn't work the way it's supposed to. It's because companies keep handing them the wrong job to do in the first place and expecting a miracle. Build me an autonomous employee that can handle all of customer operations, start to finish, no supervision needed at all. That sounds impressive when you say it out loud in a planning meeting, doesn't it? Everyone nodding along. But it also creates a security nightmare, a measurement nightmare, and an integration nightmare, all at the same time, all showing up on day one of the project. The winning agent isn't going to be the one that's the most autonomous, the one doing the most on its own without asking anyone. It's going to be the one with the smallest job that still creates measurable value for the business day one, not eventually, not someday. And that's exactly where the interesting gap starts to show up once you actually go looking for it. Most business automation works beautifully, right up until the moment reality stops following the script it was originally written for. And business reality is basically an endless pile of edge cases that nobody ever got around to writing a rule for. Traditional automation hits an exception and it simply stops and waits for a person to notice it sitting there in a queue somewhere. An agent can see that same exception and actually go investigate what's behind it instead of just flagging it and walking away. It can pull the relevant context, compare the evidence, work out what probably happened, and recommend what to do next, all before a human even opens the ticket. And when it isn't confident in the answer, it doesn't pretend that it is, which matters a lot more than it sounds like on paper. It asks a human instead, and it hands over everything it already found, not a blank ticket with no context attached. So let's actually build one of these, start to finish, using a real, boring example, not a flashy demo. Take something painfully boring. Invoice exceptions, the kind every finance team fights with every single week of the month. Normally, your automation just checks the invoice against the purchase order, and if the numbers match, it calls the job done. But this invoice comes in 20% higher than the purchase order says it should be, and now nobody knows what to do. The old workflow stops right there and waits for a person to pick it up. Our agent starts digging into it instead. It pulls up the purchase order, the invoice history, the supplier emails, and the contract, all on its own, in seconds, not hours. And then it finds the one detail everybody else missed the first time around, buried 3 emails deep. The supplier had an approved price increase that simply never made it into the invoice workflow in the first place. Now the agent is looking at three real options. not just one default reaction to fall back on every time it gets stuck. If the evidence is strong enough, it just resolves the case on its own and moves straight on to the next one in the queue. If the evidence doesn't line up cleanly, it hands the case to a person instead, with everything already attached and organized. And just as important, it explains exactly why it made that call. In plain language, a person can actually go check. This is where the economics actually start to get interesting and where most videos on this topic stop short. You don't need an agent that replaces an entire department to make a project like this worth building. You need one that clears the pile of exceptions eating up your most expensive people's time every single week of the year. And that pile is genuinely worth solving because every single case sitting in it already has a real, measurable cost attached to it, whether anyone's tracking it or not. Measure how long it takes to resolve a case, how many people have to touch it, how often it gets escalated, how often it goes wrong, and how much money comes back because of it. Now, your agent has an actual job description and a scoreboard that proves whether it's really working or just looks busy on a dashboard somewhere. But here's the part almost every AI demo you've ever seen completely misses. The model sitting underneath your agent isn't your moat. Anyone can call the exact same model you do today for roughly the same price. Your workflow data is. Every exception the agent resolves teaches the system what your business actually considers normal in your world, not some generic one from a training set. And every case it hands off teaches it exactly where a human still needs to make the final call and why that boundary exists. Put those two things together over time, and you've built something far harder for a competitor to copy than a clever prompt. So, here's my actual rule for building agents in 2026 in one sentence. Don't try to automate the whole workflow in one go, no matter how tempting that sounds. Automate the decision boundary instead, the one narrow spot where things actually keep breaking over and over. Find the exception that keeps repeating, give the agent real context to work with, limit how much authority it actually has, and measure exactly what it does. That's controlled autonomy. And honestly, it's a lot less flashy than it sounds when you say it out loud in a pitch deck, which is exactly why it works. The future isn't humans versus agents fighting over the same job. It's humans handling judgment and agents handling everything that happens around it every single day quietly in the background. The real opportunity here isn't another AI employee with a fancy title. It's the AI that finally handles the work your automation keeps throwing back at your team week after week after week, piling up while everyone's too busy to notice.